Hi there, welcome back to the Everyday Artisan. I'm Jackie, and today I want to talk about the wisdom of the honeybees and do some happy crafting. The bees have been busy this week. I spend a third of my year up at our family cottage. We share our cottage with a big extended family, and we have to work together. And so this week I was watching the bees very busy around, and I thought to myself, there's a lot we can learn from the way honeybees work together. And we can needle felt one. First, 6 quick lessons. 1. Communicate well. Honeybees are in constant communication. They're always alerting all of their other hive mates to the conditions in their environment, where to find the best flowers, and they pass on this information to ensure the well-being of the hive. 2. Use your day productively. Honeybees make sure to take advantage of every moment of daylight to make honey. They note the important things like where are the good flowers. And if you're interested in learning more about flower pressing, you can check out my other video on pressing flowers and making sweet bookmarks. But back to the honeybees. They pay attention to where the good things are, like where the good flowers are, and they let go of things that are no longer relevant or important. They are completely present all the time. 3. Adapt and evolve. Honeybees will change their homes when an environment is no longer conducive to the health of the hive. They're not discouraged by change, and they don't worry about getting into a new environment. They push themselves and they quickly get back to work for their well-being. 4. Be efficient. Honeybees are single-minded, and each has a clearly defined role in the hive. They live their purpose, keeping their focus on their job and not getting bogged down by the drama of other bees. 5. Teamwork is key. You don't ever need to do anything alone. Working with a team always has advantages. Honeybees are the ultimate well-oiled machine. You know how a day with your family or your work unit or your classroom just goes by without a hitch, or an event that runs off, no problems at all? It is usually because each member of the team is thinking about the well-being of the entire team and not pandering to the singular emotions or moods of one member. Now, honeybees do pay attention to each member in the hive, and if they find one honeybee is struggling or is sick, the other members around it will pick up the slack and carry the whole hive forward to ensure their well-being. Lastly, number 6, take time to rest. The myth of busy as a bee, busy all the time. Bees are not Energizer bunnies. They do take time to rest. They actually work 1/3 of their time with great dedication and singular focus on their job, leaving 2/3 of their time to rest and recharge. So, make like a honeybee and feel the effects of support and kindness within your community, big or small, and let's get crafting. Our materials and tools today include a needle felting surface, which I use a double burlapped bag just bought at a craft store filled with rice, needle and thread. I have an assortment of needles, which I'll talk about as we're actually needle felting. I use a skewer and or a chopstick, a good pair of my favorite sharp scissors. Oh, there's some flowers. Some beautiful wool. I bought this through Serafina Fiber Art, for whom I am a certified fiber art teacher. So links for that will be in the show description. Lots of beautiful tutorials. She has a very extensive bee tutorial compared to the simple bee tutorial we're going to do today. And then I use Lutradur for the wings, which is a mixed sheet. It's kind of a compressed fabric papery type of thing. And I use a micron marker for a little bit of detail, micron 01. I always like to start with a sketch of anything I'm doing, even though this bee will be much simpler than these very detailed or semi-detailed drawings. I do like to have just a sense of the anatomy of whatever it is I'm going to be needle felting. When I begin any project, I always tend to work with a core wool first, and core wool is kind of nubby compared to a finish wool, which you can see here has a much finer, straighter type of linear quality to the way the fibers set themselves up. This here is a much more fuzzy and firm, and it felts up really nicely. So we're going to start with some core wool, and I'm just going to make a small bee, and I'm going to wind it on my skewer. And this is just a barbecue skewer, and I'm going to be taking and winding this up kind of in a figure 8 kind of style. I don't want to make my bee super big. I might make this into a little brooch or something. there's a honeybee festival coming up in the area that my cottage is in, that I spend my summer at, and I was thinking, oh, this would be fun to have to wear to the honeybee festival. Now, bees do have two pointy parts. The tush and the head is also a little bit pointed. So I'm going to twist this on, and I'm going to use my twist needle. You can see that in how it catches itself. And this is a 38 twist needle, and I'm going to firm it on a little bit. And when I do that, I'm tilting it off to the side so I don't hit the wooden skewer inside. But I like to just give it a little bit of firmness before I pull it off. That way it won't like just stretch off. And it doesn't take a lot, just a little bit to pull it off. Slip it off, and now I've got this little pod. Going to spend a minute, make it nice and firm. And whatever you start with, when you are needle felting, it will condense. What the needles are doing is tangling the fibers up. And when we tangle the fibers up, we end up creating a little firm nugget. So now that my little nugget is pretty firm, I'm not going to make it too hard because I still need to do a little bit of shaping. And now back at my drawing. So I'm going to take my little drawing, and I notice, it's got 3 separate segments, and I'm going to do a little bit of dividing on my bee, and that will help me with the proportions as we move forward. I'm going to use a little bit of this kind of a brownish core wool, and take a little wisp of it, and I'm going to take one off, and I'm going to take and wind it around the head, nice and tight. Now I'm going to take another little piece, and I'm going to make this kind of into a little piece of yarn. All yarn is twisted wool roving, and I'm going to wrap it around the middle portion and cinch it in a little bit. So I'm going to tuck that in. Then I'm going to tighten this down and create that segment. Dab that in a little bit more. So now I have the head, the body, and the tail. The head I can take and create another segment by rolling it and stabbing it where the 2 edges meet. Using very little bits right now. And I'm going to switch to a finer needle. This here is a triangle, a 40 triangle needle, and this is for finer finishing work. Zoom in a little bit more. I don't know if you can hear, there is a very, very naughty little red squirrel who has decided to interrupt my video today. But anyhow, so we're going to make this nice and clear that this is separate from the middle part. Now you can see here, this is an important thing to notice. I started with white core wool, and when you stab all the way through from the top side to the other side, what you do is you push some of the white wool out. So you want to go back and forth and firm that up, and you can circumvent that by taking and changing the direction of your needle. So I'll stab just a little bit to put it on, and then I will stab it back where it won't cause any white fibers to come out the other side. Hey there, little fella. This little red squirrel has a lot to say. Now I'm going to go on to the tail, and the tail is going to be yellow and black stripes down to the end. And when I was looking at some of the photos off of Google, I always like to Google them. I could see, 1, 2, 3, 4 black stripes, and the rest was kind of a soft yellow. And I think I'll go ahead and do it just like that. It's good sometimes just to pick an image and work from it, because if you look at too many images, you can get overwhelmed and then you'll never make a decision. So I'm going to wrap the yellow on as the base coat. Then I'm going to go back to my dark wool, and I'm going to start with the tip of the tail, and I'm going to pull a little bit of the fiber on, tuck it in. You can grab the little fibers with your needle. A little bit more. Pull a little bit more. I'm going to roll it a little bit in my hands, cause it to create a little bit of strength on it. Around. Okay, so now you can see I have the tail kind of done, and I always get my work to a state of completion, but it might not be completely done, and I come back. So next I'm going to add a little bit of fiber. I'm going to take a little bit of this light and dark yellow and a tiny bit of the brown, and I'm going to finger card it. And by finger carding, I'm just pulling it apart, breaking the fibers down a bit. The middle part of the body of the bee is actually kind of fuzzy, and it has all the colors in it. So I thought I will try it this way. So I'm going to take this in little pieces, and I'm going to lay it across the body like this, but I promise you it will come together. I need a little bit more, so I'm gonna just pull off the tiniest pieces, so little, rip them apart. The long fibers can be broken apart. If you hold your fingers nice and close to each other, you can end up with some fibers like that. Okay, so now see how it looks all wonky? I'm going to fold these down and needle felt them in, still using my 40 triangle, which is a nice finish needle. Covering up any white spots at this point. Alright, so now it's hanging over the rest of it. You can do two things. I'm going to needle some of it in there. Because the middles of the body are kind of fuzzy. They almost look like fur. So you want those little fibers coming out this way and that. Rolling it around. And then I'm going to trim it. With my trusty Fiskars, my favorite scissors, going to go and just give them a little trim. When I first started needle felting, I was a purist and I never cut my fibers at all. I always found some way to work with them. But I have graduated past that point and I am not above a haircut every so often. Okay, so now I'm going to look at my bee and I'm going to give him a little bit of a bend. And this will be the head, and you can shape the wool even with your little fingers. And put away any little pieces that are looking like they're stray. And there we've got our little pointed nose. We could put eyes on there if we wanted to, but I'm not going to today. I'm going to keep this quite simple. And the last thing it's going to need is its wings. I love how honeybees defy gravity with their tiny wings compared to their body weight. So I use Lutradur for the wings. So Lutradur is a mixed media sheet and it comes in two weights, a medium and a lightweight. And the medium weight is thicker and firmer. So for this little project, because it's a wing on a very tiny thing, I'm going to use the lightweight one. And it is a very straightforward little task. I like that the Lutradur already has this webbing in it. It looks very wing-like already, but I am probably going to use a little micron 1-point marker to put a little tiny detail in. And since my honeybee ended up being very close to the size, I'm going to use this little pattern to do my cutouts on. So what I'm just going to do is trace it lightly with my pencil, and with this scale I'm actually going to create the double wing look. And then I'm just going to cut it out. And to make this super simple, I'm actually going to fold it over like so. It's easier to work with your fingers nice and close together. And now we have a little tiny pair of wings. And just for fun, I'm going to put a few little webbings in there. So we'll put with my micron marker, just to give the impression or the illusion of the markings. It doesn't have to be too detailed. And then they will get sewn on to the back. So after a little thought, I decided I wanted my wings to hang down more, and I'm going to cut them in half. And then put them more down like that. Maybe out and down a little bit. And cover up the edges with a little bit of the wool. So I'm going to use just my needle and thread and make sure I'm pulling it from the bottom, because I'm actually going to use the thread, I hope, to create a little string for it to hang from. So put that in there. The wonderful thing about working with this kind of wool is that it's very forgiving. You can cover up lots of little details and stuff. So that through. Okay, so for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my strong needle. This is probably a 34. It's a pretty strong one, and I'm going to pull. Oh, actually, what I want to do first is I want to trim any little extra pieces off of this. Pop those out a bit, and then I'm going to pull a little bit of my wool loose around it and camouflage. Sometimes a fine needle will go through better. A little more out here, and then press it over the top. There we go. Then I look at the bottom and I have some knots and stuff. I can also pull up or press in that knot or cover it up, trim off that little bit of excess thread, pull it in, and then I'm going to make a loop for my honeybee to hang from as a little ornament. Push it back through. Give my little hanger here, and then just knot her off at the bottom. A couple times through the old knots. And then tangle them up in fibers. And there you go.